Hello. So as a follow-up video to my original Pokemon short, I'm going to be covering another aspect that people don't know is my opinion on the whole situation with Pokemon and the whole Power World legal crap. So my honest opinion, Nintendo should not be using game patents they clearly do not own for their own personal game. And two, my honest opinion, the bare minimum, Pokemon's a lot darker, and honestly, Power World sheds a lot more light on the more realistic aspects of Pokemon. Like, if these two video games were books, one would have a more romanticist tone, like Pokemon, and one would have more of a realistic tone and feel like something that would be written by Ernest Hemingway. In my honest opinion in the matter, when you really think about Pokemon and peel back the layers of things, there's a lot more darker elements than people plan to tell you. Like, we all joke about it from time to time, that Pokemon has something dark about it, like how one Pokemon literally drags children to the underworld, or the fact that they're fighting to the death in a blood sport. But when you actually take time to think about that, it's one-to-one with something we have in the real world when you really think about it. Now, I have already mentioned pit bull fights and how pit bulls are trained and fought and everything else is basically the same as Pokemon battles. Maybe not one-to-one, but there's a clear, obvious distinction that puts them in a similar manner. So the bare minimum of what I'm trying to explain is that basically a lot of things that Pokemon deal with are very similar to a lot of forms of animal abuse or sports that are genuinely illegal with animals and mirror the real world. Want a few examples? Well, number one, skipping the pit bull fight, because you guys don't want to hear me talk about that. Races. Like, for instance, you've probably seen horse races or dog races where people just gamble or bet on a certain animal who will win, and since things are basically out of the control when no one's actually in charge of which horse wins this match or something else. But basically, yeah. And Nintendo kinda doesn't easily get away with that. Like, gambling and video games kinda go together like butter and bread. Now, I'm not talking about like loot boxes, but like basically in Pokemon or in any other video game, there's a chance you'll just stumble across some random thing that resembles horse racing. Like, Pokemon has it a few times in games where Pokemon does have to race against other competitors. But then there are other situations, like Nintendo's situation with Zelda. Yeah, you're probably asking, what form of animal abuse could you find in Zelda? Well, simple. Majora's Mask actually has this. Are you familiar with greyhound races? You know, the race where basically certain dogs are abused to win races by running several miles while being basically carried over with a piece of rabbit on a stick? Well, basically, Zelda's got that. In one of the areas in Majora's Mask, your goal is to find a winning racing dog and put them through a basic race to earn a certain amount of rubies to complete a challenge. Now, at first, you're just going to think, oh, it's your generic fetch quest in an RPG action-esque adventure game. But when you really stop to think about it, you're literally gambling. You're paying money to see these random dogs race for no particular reason. And there's one dog that people constantly know is famous for losing. Specifically, the blue dog in Majora's Mask. Now, people have figured out a source glitch that does allow him to win, but the issue genuinely is that the fact is, he never does. These games just constantly show aspects of similar things to fights between Pokemon and fights between animals in the real world that show up very often. Now, I have already covered pit bulls, as I've said before, but there's another form of fighting that you've probably seen in modern media and in the real world if you've ever been to a bar or some random crazy place. You've seen people put a spider in a wooden box or a bowl next to a scorpion and have the two fight with each other. Note the situation here. It's a 2v2 fight with two animals with very different abilities. One could have webbing to mask an enemy, and one could have a poison attack. Does that sound familiar to you? A 2v2 fight between two animals trained by two random people. That is a 2v2 fight, and at the end of the match, the character gets money from it. Coincidence? I think not. And honestly, it's not just fallen to the common consensus that there's been some dark crap in Pokemon. A man actually had a dream once that God told him to throw away all his Pokemon collectibles and belongings because they were demonic. At first, this man thought it was just a simple situation of an idol. But the real problem is that actually it was because various aspects of Pokemon's gameplay, lore, and characters resemble various demonic or other religions' cultures that Christianity and other religions would definitely not agree with. Also, that's not considering the fact that people keep on making a lot of messed up art that honestly would get me demonetized if I show you just a simple glimpse of it. But the point still remains. This game that we've all grown to love and appreciate has a lot more darker elements under the surface. And while we've all casually joked about it from time to time, Palworld was destroyed not because it's just a better Pokemon game, but because it brings darker elements about Pokemon to light. Things that we just don't stop to think about because it's a video game. But then again, as games become more and more skilled and become more cinematic and are considered pieces of art, you start to think to yourself, am I really playing a video game? Or am I witnessing something darker, covered with a layer of fantasy to it to keep me silent? The aspect of it is just genuinely wrong. And an issue I had with Pokemon games is that the human doesn't do jack squat. You literally throw a ball, have your monster do all the work, and basically you reap the rewards. They die, you don't care. Which honestly, in the first Pokemon game, your rival fully evolves their Rattata and you kill it. You cause it to faint, and then the next time you see it's the rival standing at the Pokemon's grave that you were responsible for putting him in the ground. I don't understand why more people don't talk about this. We've all had the whole Pokemon is demonic aspect, but has anyone ever stopped to think, could Pokemon potentially be violent? And I know what you're thinking. Cute little creatures, how could they possibly be violent? Well, honestly, it's not that they're violent themselves. It's that what you do in these games is genuinely dark when you stop and think about a real world parallel to it. And that's not even considering the factor that some of these Pokemon literally mirror real factors in the real world, like people experimenting with animals and abusing them, which literally is something that created Mewtwo and several other types of Pokemon. What about random Pokemon? What about using drugs to docile animals to make them easier catching for hunting and sport? Pokemon's got that too. As MatPet put it, it's really funny how a dark sense of humor can be brought down by such an oddball storytelling and a light, broad color scheme. Honestly, I'm not the first one to notice this, and you probably won't be the last, but honestly, I feel like we unanimously need to take more notice in this. With so much controversy over whether video game violence is a prevalent issue, I'm surprised Pokemon doesn't show up in this situation in, the topic of animal abuse, because realistically speaking, it is actual violence. You're literally grabbing a random animal in its infancy, forcing him to take down other people's pets for cash, and then it slowly grows up, becoming more aggressive and more agitated towards violence. And the anime loves to just romanticize this as, you're getting stronger as friends. But honestly, when is a human ever actually doing it? When is Ash Ketchum ever throwing himself out into the ring and ready to fight? He's not doing anything. And I think that's why Palworld genuinely felt more to people, because the human character He's actually responsible for things. Your actions have consequences, and what you're doing is to both benefit the pals and yourself. Or you could do it the wrong way and be as dark as Pokemon has, because the game gives you the option to be good or bad with it, showing a more realistic undertone. In my opinion, Pokemon has a lot more darker elements than people want you to let on, and Palworld was attacked not just because of patents or game mechanics or because of copyright laws, but because it outdid Nintendo and it brought darker elements that they genuinely sweep under the rug to light. But it's all in the manner of your opinion. Leave a comment below, and I'm out.